All right, here we are. This is going to be Tuesday night's lesson, September 11th, in preparation for the block day. This lesson is going to be covering decimals and fractions and reviewing the steps that you would take to solve decimal and fraction problems. This lesson is also going to be broken up into two parts. You know, we've been putting these lessons now on YouTube, and we have to keep it to a certain length of time, and it's going to go over that time. So we're going to put the decimal work in one lesson, and then there's going to be the fraction work in a second lesson. So just know that it's going to be broken down into two parts. All right, so what you need is your spiral, your flip chart notes, and a highlighter, of course. You need to get those items before you continue. Then you need to set your spiral up using your Cornell note method style with the date and the title. So pause the video if you need to set that up. And then we're going to get started with our decimals. So let's look at decimals first. Make sure you have a highlighter if possible. If you don't, at least underline the parts that I'm going to tell you to highlight, because I want to point out some important information and some reminders. So let's look at multiplying decimals to begin with. All right, so take your highlighter. First thing to always remember when you're multiplying decimals is you want to put the number with the most numbers in it on top. So that way you're doing less multiplication. When you line them up with the numbers, not the decimals. Okay, you line up the numbers, you're going to multiply just like you would normally multiply numbers together. Then you have to count up all the digits behind the decimal in both numbers, and you put that same amount in your answer. So if you look at this particular problem, you can see that there were 2 spots and 1 spot. That's why we put 3 spots in the answer. So again, put the number with the most digits on top, line the numbers up, not the decimals, and make sure you count the number of decimals that are in the problem. That's the same amount you put in the answer. All right, let's look at the division. Okay, first thing I want to point out on the division is the different ways you will normally see it. If it is already set up like this, that's fine. You're already ready to go to move your decimal. But if you see problems that are, for example, 0.144 divided by 0.12, please know that that first number is the number that goes inside the house. Okay, it's the first number. It's also like top dog inside the house. So if you see it in fraction form, the top number goes inside the house. Okay, so make sure you do that. Now, when you go to the next step, you got to also understand we don't divide by decimals. So that's the reason why the step says to move the decimal over. Move the decimal outside toward the division symbol, because we don't divide by decimals. But what you do to the outside, you also have to do to the inside. And then this is the problem that you end up having. You bring your decimal up and you do your division. Okay, so that's division of decimals. Let's jump straight down into then adding and subtracting of decimals. So of course, unlike your multiplication, you do line up the decimals when you are adding and subtracting. And then you can fill in with zeros if you find it necessary, which sometimes, most of the time, it's a little bit easier to work them out if you do. So if we look at the first problem, you're going to line this up as, and I'm going to move to the side here, 2.3, and then I'm going to put the decimal for the second one, 0.25, and fill in with zeros. Then you would do your normal subtraction. So actually this is addition, so that makes it even easier. You just add them up, making sure you bring your decimal straight down in your problem. Okay, so 2.325 was the final answer there. Now the next problem is a subtraction problem. So again, first number, there is actually a decimal there. It's 5.0, which that's what's going to line up with 0.2. Then you can do your borrowing, and you end up with 4.8. So again, you line up your decimals, fill in with zeros if you need it. The last problem, line your decimals up, can fill in with 0, then you can do your subtraction, which again would require some borrowing in this case as well. Okay, so important things: multiplication, line up numbers; adding and subtracting, line up decimals. When you're dividing, we don't divide by a decimal, you move it over, do the same thing on the inside. The next video you will watch will cover the fraction portion of the remainder. So that was the decimals. So now you're going to need to Stop this video, go to the second video.